Mr. President, and I rise to speak to this critical motion from the Honourable Tammy Franks. It's hard to fathom a more crucial duty for our state government than to ensure the safety, the security and the well-being of our most vulnerable children. And yet the current state of our child protection system is nothing short of a national disgrace. The system is broken, and the children of South Australia are paying the price. Now, Mr. President, when I came into this place, I thought I was going to be a voice for the regions. But I've had the privilege of meeting so many of our state's dedicated foster and kinship carers in my very short time in this place. Individuals who have opened their hearts and their homes to the care of children in need. And I'm thankful for every single one of them. And many of them are actually quite afraid to be named because of this department's brokenness. But I am thankful to the Carers Project's Lisa O'Malley and Joyce Woody for their impassioned advocacy and deep knowledge in this space. It is the dedication of foster carers like Lisa, like Joyce, and the dozens of others that I have met that is inspiring. But all too often, their stories are heart-wrenching. They reveal a system riddled with bureaucracy, neglect, and outright disregard for the welfare of children and the carers who support them. And the current Minister for Child Protection, the Honourable Katrine Hilliard, has demonstrated nothing but a shocking dereliction of duty. It is an insult to the people of South Australia that while she is now assisted in her portfolio of sport, rec and racing, no such support has been provided for the critical area of child protection. And this prioritisation speaks volumes about this government's misplaced values. Child protection should be the Minister's top priority. It should be the Minister's top priority. Irrespective of whether they are competent or not, it is their top priority. Instead, we have a minister more focused on attending sporting events, riding around on a scooter, than addressing the dire issues within her most pressing portfolio. This negligence is not just a failure of responsibility, it is a betrayal of the children who depend on the state and on this minister and her chief executive for their safety and their future. The promises that were made during the election campaign have well and truly been broken. Prior to the election 2 years ago, the member for Raynell, now the Child Protection Minister, pledged to the peak body that, and I quote, "If the child protection system is going to do the job the community expects of it, it must be open for scrutiny. And the people most involved, the children and the carers, must be able to speak up." End quote. And another broken promise from that same letter, and I quote, "A Malinowskis Labor government will legislate faster response by the government to complaints from carers who ensure complaints processes are effective." End quote. The Malinowskis government pledged a review of the Child and Young People's Safety Act 2017, and yet we have seen no such review. Dr Arnie's independent inquiry into foster and kinship care report recommendations do not meet the carers' expectations for meaningful change. While an independent carer council has been established, this was not sought after by any carer that I have met with. Additionally, a number of those on the carer council are either employed in the child protection sector or, shockingly, are employed directly by the department themselves. It is clear from the terms of reference for an independent inquiry that the department's complaints management process were a prominent reason for its commissioning. And Dr Arnie's November 2022 report extensively documents the concerns of carers about the current system, and her first 6 recommendations specifically refer to the processes that will improve current inadequacies. But, as the Minister confirmed to me in writing in February this year, she does not support an independent complaints mechanism. This was even news to the peak body, connecting foster and kinship carers, when I met with them more than 6 weeks later. Talk about openness and transparency. In addition to establishing a proper and arm's-length complaint process, carers have also raised to me the need for carers to have a standing in court, the need for respite entitlements to be legislated, the necessity for an increase in base payments to keep up with the cost of living, and the need for the Child Death and Serious Injury Review Committee to report and collect data on serious injuries. Instead of genuine reform and review, we have a system more focused on child removal and exploiting foster and kinship carers rather than promoting the best interests of children and young people. And while the government should have acted 2 years ago, it must take decisive action now to progress the reforms that were promised and to prioritise the holistic welfare of our children. Financially, the mismanagement is staggering. Each child placed into residential care costs the taxpayers in this state over $500,000 a year. And in contrast, foster and kinship care, which provides exceptionally better outcomes for children, is far more cost effective. The failure to support these carers adequately not only wastes taxpayer money, but also diminishes the life prospects of the children involved. These carers, treated like second-class citizens, deserve better support and recognition for their invaluable contributions. One of the key issues driving carers away is the unbearable financial burden placed upon them. Carers have described the situation as financial extortion, leaving them unable to continue their critical voluntary duties. And Mr. President, these people are, for all intents and purposes, volunteers. The government must overcome these financial strains. They must provide adequate support to retain and recruit more foster and kinship carers. And if this does not happen, more children will end up in costly and less effective residential care. Mr. President, the Minister's engagement with carers has been abysmal. Carers have been ignored, their concerns left unaddressed, and essential supplies delayed for months. The Minister's lack of action and misleading responses have further eroded trust. This is unacceptable and it must change. Foster and kinship carers should not have to wait for months for essential safety equipment, for disability supports, for medical supplies. The Minister and her Chief Executive appear to engage selectively and then fail to act, leaving carers and children in precarious situations. This lack of responsiveness, this lack of transparency is a profound failure of leadership. It is a direct contradiction of the statement of commitment that crystallises how those involved in the care of our state's most vulnerable children should act. Mr. President, this government must get serious about protecting children. It must get serious about supporting those who care for them. It is high time to appoint a standalone child protection minister, one who can solely focus on this critical issue. It is high time to appoint a competent one. The last thing this state needs, Mr. President, is an assistant minister for the bread and circuses of the Malinowskis government. The current minister's divided attention and lack of attention, or action should I say, is not acceptable. Our children and their carers deserve better. They deserve a better system that works. They deserve a government that listens. And they deserve a leader that acts. Nothing else is acceptable.